Welcome to Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Roger.
And today we are going to preview and predict the biggest welterweight fight since Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao going down this Saturday between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford for the very first undisputed welterweight champion in the four-belt era. And when you think about how many great welterweight champions we've had in the last 40 to 50 years since the four-belt era has started, to have the very first being crowned on the 29th of July of 2023 is pretty major. So I'm going to let Rob start us off. Go ahead, bro.
All right, everyone. This is literally the biggest welterweight fight that we have had since Mayweather and Pacquiao. And even that fight came about 3 to 5 years too late. And this is two of the top guys in the 147-pound division, with Terence "Bud" Crawford taking on Errol Spence. Both undefeated, both 1A and 1B, or both 1A, or however you want to look at these two guys in the welterweight division and on the pound for pound rankings, because you could categorize both of them depending on who your pound for pound is, 1, 2, 1, 3, but they're definitely in, I would say, the top 5. And for years, these guys have really been chirping back and forth, been wanting to fight each other. We know Terence Crawford has been with top rank since he's gotten to the big time, originally brought in as a substitute versus Bradis Prescott, where he really made his name with a big knockout in that fight and that division. And then we have Errol Spence, who's pretty much been a who's who in the welterweight division under PBC, the PBC banner, taking on all the, I would say, more top welterweights that they had to offer on their end. So this is going to be an amazing matchup. I don't know if you've seen the meme, but at one of the pressers, both guys was wearing black Air Force One. So you know that energy is going to be great. And we know these guys do give great action-packed fights. It's going to be for the money, undisputed, all ego, whatever you want to say. And I would actually say this fight is going to take an immense amount of energy, emotion, and probably career out of both of these guys. Well, both of them being in their 30s. I want to say Crawford is 35 or 36.
35, yep.
And Errol Spence is about to enter his mid-30s. I think he's about, what, 31?
33.
33? So these guys have been around for a long time. And this might be the career pinnacle for both of these guys. And unfortunately, unless it ends in a draw, this is going to be someone's has to go. And this is probably one of the hardest fights to call in recent memory when it comes to two top level guys.
Yeah, so important. Like, these guys have like some of the most loyal fan bases that exist in boxing. Like, I don't know, like, if y'all have been and read any articles, watched any video, like, these guys, like, the fans of these fighters just about worship the ground they walk on. And it's gotten quite obnoxious, honestly. But the skill and the talent and the personas of these men are that which command attention and respect. So this one is highly anticipated, not just for the implications, but like I said, like, they both have massive fan bases of loyal to a fault fans, where like they can't even fathom a loss for their guy. Like, somebody could be like, oh, well, this happened here. Like, oh, you're just making stuff up. Like, it just gets ridiculous. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to talk about which skills we think the other fighter will bring to the table, how they'll play out in the ring, and try to pick a winner. Because I've been back and forth on this myself, on who I think's going to win. And even up until like maybe like 2 days ago, I thought I had a solid pick, and then I started thinking about some other things. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not as confident in my pick as I thought I was. So, um, you know, let's start with Crawford and talk about like what he brings to the ring, as far as like his ability to switch stances. He has a great educated jab from both stances. He's able to cut angles. He's able to throw his punches at different angles. Like sometimes he'll keep his hands up and throw them traditionally. Sometimes he'll bring them down and do up jabs. He can hook around the guard from up high and from down low. He shoots great uppercuts. His last knockout against Avanesian came via uppercut. Um, there's really not a lot that he can't do. So how do you think he's going to employ those styles and possibly use that to his advantage against Spence?
So with Crawford, I think the biggest word for me is adjustments. He has this uncanny ability to adjust throughout the fight in real time. It's very similar to Mayweather, but instead of Mayweather never really changing his stance, never really changing his game plan, he imposes his style and his ability on you by seeing what you're doing, taking inventory, and then taking it away. That's how good his reflexes are. The difference is Crawford will knock you out. He has a bit more of a puncher's mean streak than Mayweather does. Mayweather has more of a mean streak because he can physically rough you up. Now take that same physical strength from 140 pounds and add punching power behind it and the disposition to want to knock you out. And he adjusts. Early in fights, one of the things I've always said is he gets hit quite a bit early in fights to the point where he will be visibly staggered, maybe even knocked down, but you're going to get his attention. And once he sees that, it's something like a switch where you might even be able to hit him multiple times with the same punch or punch combination over the first 6 rounds. But if you pay attention, they come at lesser and lesser regularity, and they're not as consistent. You may be able to hit them with a right hand, a counter right hand, but that counter right hand, it first, it finds its mark, but then it finds its mark with not quite enough power. Then all of a sudden, it's not, the frequency of that punch goes away. And unless you can regularly change up your pattern and how you use your own tools, he's going to time you by the 5th round. And that's when he really starts taking over and countering and then leading, because he's basically destroyed your will to really want to engage with them. And we've seen this against a guy in Sean Showtime Porter in their fight. And as strong and as relentless as he is, and granted, I think that was the fight that retired him. And being
Yes.
that he has been through so much, even then, you did not expect him to just impose his will on those last rounds in which his corner was forced to throw in the towel. And that's just what he does to you. Those adjustments happen, and it's subtle at first, and then all of a sudden this guy has complete control of a fight. Not only that, besides getting hit early and adjusting, but his switch hitting, when he's more in an orthodox style, he's a little bit more defensively responsible, but punching from a southpaw stance, he looks to be more offensively um, engaged. He throws a lot more punches. He's a little bit more awkward looking. He'll willingly take a punch to deliver his own, and because he's from that southpaw stance, they're going to come at an angle that you're probably not going to be used to. And his opponents, I don't know if they train with guys who fight specifically in southpaw, but they seem like they're never really ready, or it just wears them down both mentally and physically. So definitely look out for that. But considering that Errol Spence is a natural southpaw,
Southpaw.
then he may be looking at a much tougher fight as far as being able to take advantage of that southpaw stance.
Yeah. So let's get into talking about Spence. So Spence is uh, also a known power puncher, and he does it with a tremendous amount of volume. And when you usually think about volume fighters, like you think about like a Margarito or what's my man that Stephen Fulton for Figueroa, Omar Figueroa,
Mm-hmm.
those type of guys. A lot of guys who throw at high volume usually are not that technically sound when they're throwing their punches. Like it's a lot of winging punches. It's just a lot of moving their hands so they can keep going. But when with Errol Spence throws everything in the perfect textbook manner, coming from that southpaw stance, but also as the rounds go on, he ratchets up his intensity to where it's like, I'm going to keep going. Can you keep up with me? And I am going to do whatever I want to do. And there's nothing you can do about it. And so far, up to, I think he has, 33? No, he's got 28 fights, and Terence Crawford has 39.
Right.
Right. So, it's up to Crawford to be able to like stop that. And one of the things that I was thinking of was like, maybe he will was that Sean Porter fight, because Sean Porter is another guy who's high energy. He's, always in your face, and he likes to keep a high pace on the fight. However, his volume is not the same as Errol Spence, and it's not coming in the same manner either. So, I was originally thinking, Crawford was able to make that adjustment. He was able to slow Porter down, and he was able to use angles and space to really time and catch Porter. And another thing is the way Spence closes, his feet are always in position. Whereas like you get somebody like Porter, who when he comes in, there's a opportunity to grab. There's a slowdown in the action sometimes. Like he had a propensity to sometimes smother his punches. That doesn't happen with Spence. And like you can cut that angle, you can come in, but because his feet are always in position to punch, there are always chances that punches are coming, and most likely they are in those spaces where normally other guys aren't punching. And that thought is where I started to be like, maybe, because originally I was like, Spence is the big guy. He was going to win, blah, blah, blah. Now I started thinking about how good Crawford was as far as like all the things that you just talked about. And I was like, man, like usually it's very hard to deal with that type of guy. But also it's very hard to deal with a type of guy like Spence because clearly the guy's undefeated. Um, and I know, there's a lot of talk about how, he's broken a couple of orbital bones. And, he systematically breaks guys down physically and mentally. So that is another factor in this fight. Like, can he wear Crawford down with that volume? I don't think the size is as bad as it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when Crawford like first came to the welterweight division. He seems
Mm-hmm.
to be filled into the division. And so I don't know if and when they're standing together, Spence is a little bit taller, but they look around the same size as far as physical, like their shoulders and in like, in the torso, they look around the same size. Um, so I don't know if that's going to be as big a factor as it's been played out in the media and most people's predictions.
Well, that's because Errol Spence has been a career 147 pounder, so he doesn't his body, unless with age he's having a harder time making weight.
which he
Um,
has said that that is the case.
yeah, so that's physically he should be the more naturally stronger fighter, but because he's so big, I'm pretty sure he's going to come in 155 at minimum, and that's on the low end. So how much is he draining himself to make 147? Whereas Terence Crawford really doesn't have any problem making 147 because of the fact that he did start at 135. But again, you say he filled out. And he's another guy that seems to be naturally strong. I mean, there's video of him deadlifting 405 pounds.
I was gonna bring that up. Also, I've seen video of him wrestling with like actual like there's one video where he's wrestling with an Olympic level wrestler and he's holding his own. I think he actually got the advantage of him for a few seconds in the video, and
Mm-hmm.
the skill and the strength to be able to do that. Like I don't know, like the physical strength of an Olympic wrestler is probably top three in the combat sports world. Probably number one. Like when you think about like how successful wrestlers are in MMA, if you have a guy with that type of strength, it is definitely going to it's going to show up in the fight. So that may help when they get in those physical exchanges. He may be able to actually push Spence back, which is something that only Sean Porter was able to do previously.
Right. And because of the physicality of Porter, who he fought at what, middleweight as an amateur, and he started off at
Yeah, he
middleweight
fought at
and came
165.
down. Yeah. And then he came down as a pro. So that is, and he's an ex football player. So you're talking about a guy who's physical and really could not bully consistently the two top guys that he's fought. Says an immense amount about how physically strong these guys are for being in those somewhat lower weights of 147. And I think Terence Crawford, in my opinion, is probably a little bit more of a true natural fighter. And I'm not saying he's a better boxer. He's just simply a better boxer or, you know, he's a kung fu master. But if you ever seen people fight on the street and tooth and nail, he seems to be more cut from that cloth. Um, Not to say Errol Spence isn't. It just seems like Terence Crawford has that do or die type of attitude.
So
Whereas you can try to oppose whatever you're doing. Like I said, those adjustments, but it doesn't work because he is, what did Mystical say? If you find me in the forest fighting the bear, help the bear. That's the type of dude that Terence Crawford is.
so who do you have winning? Do you have a solid pick?
I do not have a solid pick because of the fact that Errol Spence, I think there are certain intangible factors that can work in his against him because of, remember, he had that car crash, which he seems to have shrugged off for the most part after a few fights because his level of competition really hasn't gone down.
Yeah, I would say
And
he's
there's
fought several times since then, and he had to pull out of the Pacquiao fight with a detached retina, and he's fought since then also. So, but it was only against Ugas, but that was a good fight. He got touched in that fight, and he was fine.
right.
So, I don't know how much of a detriment that's going to be to him. It doesn't have. It has not seemed to have affected him yet.
And I like Crawford because I think he can set similar traps that Ugas did to deliver punishment and to draw him in. And because he has more punching power than Ugas, I think he can make him pay for it a lot more than Ugas could. But I don't think Crawford has seen a guy with the volume of punching the technicality of delivering those punches and still a physically big dude all in one.
I agree,
So,
which is why
and it,
I'm very torn on who I want to pick. Like I kind of want to lean towards Crawford. Like he just seems to be able to have more that he can do, but what Errol Spence does is so good, it's really hard to pick against it. Like he's been in there with slick guys, didn't matter. He's been in there with rough guys, didn't matter. But then when you say that, you see that same thing with Crawford also. Like neither guy has been in with the level like that. They've been in there with high level guys, but they haven't been in there with like somebody as special as they are. So,
yeah,
this is I think this is just one you should just sit back and enjoy.
right.
Um,
I don't know what the odds are, and that's the last factor. This is more of an
I
address to
think
people
Crawford's the
who talk.
favorite.
Oh wow, then that's unexpected. But and this is more so for the audience and for people who really look toward their competition to want to make a pick. Errol Spence has the sexy names on his record because it's PBC, because they promote their guys, because I think they're actual bigger names of the Porters. Brook, because he got to Brook before Terence Crawford got to Brook. He's had Danny Garcia. Who else has he
Mikey
had?
Garcia.
Yeah, Mikey Garcia. Didn't he fight? He didn't fight Danny either. I thought he
Yeah, he
did.
fought Danny. He fought
Yeah,
Danny after the accident.
yeah. So he's got these sexy names on his record, which you could point to say, hey, this is why I'm picking the guy. But if you actually look at Terence Crawford's record, not only he has a lot of high level competition that you really don't know about. European guys, some Olympian guys. We're talking about the Victor Postal, who had a great win and was looking to take that next step up, ran into Terence Crawford. You have Yuriorkis Gamboa, was definitely that next guy, Vinny Tyson. Took his zero, had it Egidijus Kabiliosis,
Kavaliauskas, Mean Machine.
big dude, yeah, very technically sound, had a good motor. I think he was an Olympian. Took his we're talking about a guy who gets off on taking people's zeros.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, I'm honestly like, I know everybody is like, you got to make a pick. No, you don't. You don't have to make a pick. Get some popcorn, enjoy the fight, and may the best man win. If y'all missed it, go back and check out our coverage of the super bantamweight title fight between Naoya Inoue and Stephen Fulton. I think we covered some great stuff there, and then I did the recap on that right after the fight. So make sure you catch those. Also, we got UFC 291 this weekend. That video will probably come out the day of that fight, but I will drop something about that. Um, yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I'm just excited to see this fight. It's got a pretty good undercard. Also, Nonito Donaire is fighting on the undercard. Isaac Pitbull Cruz is fighting on the undercard. Um, there's three fights on there, but they're all very solid fights. So this one is one you can sit down with your friends and you can watch in its entirety and not just the main event and experience some good, excellent technical and something that'll make you jump out of your seat, just exhibitions of the sweet science. So
Mm-hmm.
so to make sure you catch the recap, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can get the notification when we do drop that recap, because we definitely going to have to recap this one because we are going to see something regardless. Either we're going to see a back and forth brawl, we're going to see a boxing exhibition in Crawford, or we're going to see a Spence like wear down and destruction. Or we may see, because we saw it against Mikey Garcia, we may see Spence outbox Terence Crawford. And I bet you nobody is predicting that one.
Not at
So
all.
You got to come back for the recap so we talk about what actually happened, and follow us on social media so you can talk about it with us during the fight. So Capital of Combat on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those things. And we'll see y'all there. Until then, fight on.
It's round one and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick rhyme, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.